I honestly feel a little bit giddy about filming this video. Like, I'm so excited because today I'm going to be going through my top 10 favorite books of all time. Over the last like 2 to 3 years, I have really fallen back in love with reading. I was such a reader as a kid, and then during the end of high school, during uni, I feel like I just didn't have the time. I was so stressed. I kind of just forgot about it. But after graduating uni and over the past 2 to 3 years, I've read probably over 200 books at this point, and I want to tell you about my top 10 favorites of all time. And I feel like one of the reasons that I'm so excited to film this video is because I love seeing people talk about what they love, because they just light up and they get so excited, and I feel like that's what this video is going to be. But at the same time, I get so nervous talking about my favorite books because I know that these are not going to be everyone else's favorites, and that's okay. But I get scared because I don't want to be torn down for loving the books that I love. So I do want to make it clear, I know that not everyone is going to love these, and that's so fine. I've always said this, but I think it's so fun that we all have different tastes and we enjoy different things. So today I'm just going to talk about books that I truly love, and I'll tell you why they left a lasting impression on me. Yes, a lot of these books are very basic or very popular reads, but they're popular for a reason. So without further ado, I'm going to be starting at what I have ranked as number 10 and move all the way up to number 1, to my absolute top favorite book, which was very hard to rank, mind you, because all of these books I love so much. All of them are 5-star reads to me. These are not all of my 5-star reads, so if you want to see like a second part to this in the future, I can do that because I have so many more books that I would love to talk about, and I'm always reading new things. But as for right now, these are the books that I truly adore. Starting off with number 10, we have Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. I feel like some of you may be shocked, but this is the only Colleen Hoover that I will be mentioning in this video, because although I love Colleen Hoover and I love her books and I love her writing, a lot of her books fall within the 4 to the 4.5 star range for me. Often there's just something that I don't quite love about the book, even if I love so many other parts of it. And I feel like a lot of you also may be shocked that I picked this one out of all of the other Colleen Hoover books that I've read, including It Ends With Us, Ugly Love, Reminders of Him, November 9. Like, I've read them all. Well, not all. She has over 20 books. But out of the 14 or so Colleen Hoover books that I've read, I think this is my favorite. Now, I will say, It Ends With Us probably should be in this top 10 list, but I read it so long ago now, like over 2 years ago, and I just feel like I can't rank it in this top 10, even though it holds such a special place in my heart, and I will forever be recommending It Ends With Us. It was the first Colleen Hoover book that I read that I absolutely fell in love with. I feel like it was the book that made me fall back in love with reading, but as of this point right now, Heartbones has taken top spot for me. And I find this really hard to explain because a lot of people don't love Heartbones, and I don't even really specifically know why I loved this book so much. I think I just really love reading books about two broken people that find healing with each other. Those sort of love stories are just my absolute favorite, and I think you'll probably see that as a theme throughout this video. In the same way that It Ends With Us, Lily and Atlas are both such broken people, and you get to see that love story unfold, I think this book kind of hit me in the same way. It is more of a YA, which I actually really love. I love a good YA, but this book just, I don't know, I just loved it. Basically, we have a girl that was raised in a really tragic home. I'm pretty sure she was born out of like a one-night stand, or at least a very fleeting relationship. And she's been raised by her mother, who is a drug addict. And she hasn't had much to do with her father, but after her mother dies of an overdose, which I'm not giving anything away, she goes to live with her father in this like beautiful beach house. And you just get to see this next phase of her life unfold as she deals with living in this kind of uncomfortable situation, because she's come from basically poverty and moves into this world of wealth basically, and she just like doesn't really know how to act or what to say or what to do with herself. And she meets this boy Samson, who is extremely reserved and just mysterious, and she just feels this pull toward him and she doesn't quite understand why. And of course, a relationship kind of unfolds there. But like I said, it's really about two broken people just finding healing within each other, and it does include a plot twist at the end, so I definitely recommend this. Coming in at number 9, we have Normal People by Sally Rooney, and I know that some people hate this book, I know that some people love this book. I have not seen the TV adaptation, and from what I've heard, a lot of people who have read the book and seen the show actually prefer the show, so if you're not interested in reading it, or you've tried reading it but haven't been able to get into it, maybe I would recommend watching the show. But I really wasn't going into this book expecting to love it, because I thought I would be one of those people who really didn't. But there is just something so poetic and artistic I guess, about this book. It's very much one of those books where it kind of feels like there's no real plot. Like, you don't really know what the aim of the book is, so if you like a plot-heavy book, maybe this one isn't for you. It's very much character-focused, and our characters are extremely flawed and extremely unlikable at times, but you follow this love story of them basically trying to not be with each other, but somehow always ending up back with each other in a very unhealthy and toxic relationship. So it's definitely not one that I read and go, oh my gosh, I wish I had a life like theirs. I wish I had a relationship like theirs. Like, that's not the case at all. But just the way that emotions and situations are explained is just so thought-provoking and poetic in a way. This book reminds me a lot of what my art teacher told me when I was in high school, which is that art isn't supposed to be aesthetic. It's not supposed to always be beautiful. It's supposed to mean something. And I know that's such a cliche, but that is what this book is to me. Like, it's not pretty, it's very ugly. It shows very ugly sides of people and relationships and codependence almost. There's a lot of ugliness, a lot of toxicity, coming of age, just like figuring out who you are in your 20s. Like, it's just full of so much, and I feel like you just either get it or you don't. And if you don't, I don't think there's anything wrong with you, and I don't think that you're any less than if you don't love this book. But for me, it was just something that struck a chord, and I can't deny that. So I often do not recommend this, and I don't think I've really mentioned it in any of my book videos, because I feel like there is such a divide as to whether people love or hate this book. So I really hesitate to recommend it because I know that a lot of people just don't love it. But for me, it's one of my absolute top favorites. Coming in at number 8 is the Addicted / Calloway Sisters series. To be fair, I'm only on the 7th book, so I have not finished the series, but so far I have just fallen in love with the characters in this book. This series is very long. It's 10 books, and I would also recommend reading it as an ebook if you can, rather than buying all the paperbacks, because they are so expensive when they all add up. Says me, who owns the paperbacks. I'm just trying to save a few of you, okay? Otherwise you will spend hundreds of dollars on this series, and I just don't think people need to do that. Again, I don't think this is something that everyone's gonna love, but for me, I just find so much familiarity and just like a sense of found family and peace when I read these books. I haven't been reading these books back to back. I've seen a few people do that, and they seem to kind of burn out and kind of end up not really loving the series or getting into a reading slump when they read them all at once. Like, it's 10 books. It's a lot of books to read back to back. I usually read like one a month, and I found that that seems to be the perfect recipe because I can go and read a bunch of other things, and then I can just like come back to this series, which feels just so like coming home, I guess is the best way to put it. If you've never heard about this series, it's about 6 best friends who become 3 couples over the series of these books, and each book is kind of narrated by a different couple. There are 3 guys, 3 girls. The 3 girls are sisters, and it really only starts out with one couple, Lily and Lo, who I think are my favorite couple in the series. And then Lily's sisters get involved, and Lo brings in his brother and best friend, and they just become this family, and they have so many adventures. They travel, and there's TV shows, and there's fame and wealth and all of these sort of things. But it's just kind of fun being able to grow up with them. That's how I would kind of describe it. So I wouldn't say the writing is the best thing I've ever seen. I wouldn't say the plot is the most thought out thing I've ever seen. There are definitely flaws within this book, and there are things that I don't love about all of the books that I've read so far, but the characters are just unmatched. They are all so different, and they all just have so much depth to them, and each book kind of builds on that depth, and I just love it. So again, I don't think it's for everyone, but it definitely is for me. There is a lot of spice in these books. I just wanted to say that because I often get questions about spiciness levels in books. I would say this book does involve a decent amount of that. All of the books do in the series. Coming in at number 7, we have The Cruel Prince. I feel like this won't be a surprise for many of you because I feel like I've talked about this book quite a lot. This is the first book in the Folk of the Air trilogy, and I want to say, as I'm talking about this book, I'm kind of talking about the trilogy as a whole because I don't feel like I can talk about one individual book. They really are just such a trilogy, I guess. They really belong together, and I do think that the series gets better as it progresses. So even if you don't love this one but you still enjoy it, you've got to read the next 2 because they're just so good. As you guys know, I'm not a huge fantasy reader, and I'd never really read any fantasy books before picking up this one, and so I was really hesitant, I was really intimidated, but I loved this. I felt like it was easy to understand. It wasn't so complicated that I was completely lost. Yes, at the start it takes a while for you to kind of wrap your head around the world building and the characters and the fae and all of the things that go along with that. But once you're in it, it is so magical. And obviously it's a fantasy book, so like that makes sense. But just having this whole new world and all of these new creatures and different rules, it is really one of those books that you can just dive into and really get lost in. And I love books like that. This is also YA, so there is no spice in this until the last book. There's like one scene, so it's like fairly clean. And I just loved the adventure, the magic, the characters, the subplot of romance, the tension building there. Like, it was just so good. So I cannot recommend this trilogy enough. Number 6, we have the Inheritance games. And I would also include the second book in the series, which is the Hawthorne Legacy, which again, I think these two books just like belong together. You have to read both of them. And the third and final book is coming out later this year, so I'm so excited for that. I feel like I went into this book not really knowing what it was going to be about. I thought it was going to be more of like Hunger Games kind of vibes, but I would not compare it to the Hunger Games at all. Basically, we have this teenage girl who ends up inheriting like billions of dollars, like this huge estate, bucket loads of money. But she inherits it from this old guy that she didn't even know existed. She'd never heard of him, she'd never met him, and she is really confused. And the rest of this guy's family, who thought they were going to inherit the money, are also very unhappy, very confused. But part of the deal for her to being able to receive this inheritance is that she has to now live in this house with the rest of his family, who are obviously very unhappy that she's the one who received all of this money. And there's honestly a lot that goes on. There's obviously the huge family dynamic that's going on with aunts and uncles and the 4 grandsons, who are all like similar-ish age to the teenage girl who inherited all the money, and the 4 boys and her all build these like different relationship, friendship type things. But they kind of go on this huge adventure to figure out like why she inherited this money, how is she kind of linked to this old guy, was it all just coincidence? Like, there's this huge mystery kind of adventure element that is going on. It kind of gives me Dark Academia vibes because they're in this like really old huge mansion. There's all these like little riddles that they have to figure out. It is so good. I also convinced my mum to read this and she really enjoyed it as well. I feel like it kind of gave me similar vibes to The Cruel Prince in the sense that it's just like adventure, subplot of romance, there's like that tension building, but it's just so fun. But obviously this is not fantasy, so if you're still not convinced to read The Cruel Prince, maybe you're convinced to read this. But yeah, I just absolutely loved both of the books in this series so far. I feel like number 4 and 5 are kind of on the same level for me. So I guess like tied 4th spot is Daisy Jones and the Six, and also The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I currently don't have because I'm lending it out to a friend. It's actually so fun. I've convinced so many of my friends to read that book, and it's just been passed along from friend to friend, and I love that because obviously the more people that read my favorite book, the more people can experience it and I can talk to about it, and it's just such a fun time. The reason why they're tied as 4th place is because I enjoyed them both the same amount. Like, I loved them both the same amount, but they were 2 very different experiences, but I just like can't decide which one I like more. I feel like people might be a little bit confused to hear that I liked this one as much as Evelyn Hugo because I kind of talk about Evelyn Hugo quite a lot more, but I think that's just because I've heard a lot of people say that they don't enjoy this one very much at all, and a lot more people seem to really enjoy Evelyn Hugo. So The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is typically the book that I go to when I want to recommend something to someone who says, I want to get into reading but I don't know where to start, because it has romance elements, it has mystery elements, it has a great plot, but so much emotional depth to it as well. So it kind of has a little bit of everything, so I think it's a great book to recommend to people, and so many people love it. But for me, I love Daisy Jones and the Six just as much. If you didn't know, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, Malibu Rising, and a 4th book that is coming later this year are all part of the Hollywood companion series that Taylor Jenkins Reid has written. So all of those books are written in the same world. So characters from Evelyn Hugo cross over into Daisy Jones, also cross over into Malibu Rising, and then we'll also cross into this 4th book that's coming soon. But although they are linked in that way, there's no real reading order. You can kind of read them in whatever you would like to. My suggestion would be The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, then Daisy Jones and the Six, then Malibu Rising, just because that is how the books were released, and that is also the storyline that the books follow. It makes more sense when you read it, but you don't have to do that. But anyway, back to Daisy Jones. It's probably one of the most unique books that I've ever read because it's written completely different from most novels that you will read. It's written completely in dialogue, so when you open it up, it looks like it's a script. So it will just have the character's name and then what they said. It's about the rise and the fall of this extremely famous fictional band back in the 70s. So someone is interviewing all of the members of this band separately, years after the band split up and they all went their separate ways. So you get to hear hear all of these different opinions as to why each character thinks they had the success that they did, and also why they think they broke up. And it's very interesting to hear all of the different opinions. This book is a roller coaster. There is romance, like multiple romances. There are friendship breakdowns. There's drugs, alcohol, addiction, family dynamics. Like there's so much included in this book, and it's so little for how much it includes. It's actually wild. There's also that concept of found family, and also a concept which I've noticed in a couple of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books now. And it's the idea that you could have a soulmate and you could have a true love, but are those two things the same person? It seems like it's a theme that TJR likes to write about, because I've noticed in a few of her books there will be characters that seem to have this love for someone, but this hidden link or like chain to someone else they constantly find themselves being pulled to, and that's what I think is like part of the idea of a soulmate. And it's just very, very interesting. So of course I would definitely recommend this. Malibu Rising is not in my top 10. It was still a 5-star read for me, but I won't be going into depth about it, but I definitely do recommend it. At this point, I have read all but one of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, and I think she is one of the most incredible storytellers of our time. All of her books are not necessarily perfect, but they are just such incredible stories, and I would recommend any of them. Moving on to the top 3. In third place, we have Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. I read this about a year ago and I fell in love. If you don't know, this is actually a, I guess, retelling of a book in the Bible called Hosea, and Francine Rivers, the author, is also a Christian. She has so many Christian fiction books. Definitely recommend checking her out, but Redeeming Love is by far her most famous book. I know it's been made into a movie now as well. I haven't seen it. I don't know if I really will, because I haven't heard the best things about it, but the book is amazing. It's basically about this girl called Angel who was sold into prostitution at a very, very young age, and it's basically all she knows. Her mother was also involved in that industry, and so she just feels like that is all she has to offer to the world, and that's like all she is, and she will never escape from that life. And then we have Michael, who has been praying for a wife, and one day God basically points out Angel and is like, you are gonna marry her. And he's like, what the heck, no way, like I am a man of God, I'm not marrying a prostitute, like that doesn't make any sense. And God is like, that is your wife. And so this whole story unfolds about how she does not want to marry this guy, but he is like, I really think you are the person I'm supposed to marry. And it turns into this beautiful love story of her learning her self-worth, that she is loved, that she is worthy of love, and also how to give love, because she's never really been loved in any capacity, whether it's been by men or her parents or anything like that. And honestly, Angel just goes through so much, and so does Michael, really. Angel is not the easiest person to love. If you know the story of Hosea, I'm sure you'll kind of know where the story goes, but ultimately it's a story about God's love for us, and no matter how many times we run away, he will continue to love us as well. But also in saying that, I know a lot of people who are not Christian who have read this book and loved it, so you don't have to be a Christian to love this book. It is just a novel, obviously with a lot of depth to it, but I think anyone could really enjoy it. I'm assuming this would be classed as like historical fiction, and I've never really read much historical fiction, but I loved this. Number 2, I don't have the physical copy because, again, I have lent it out to a friend who actually just finished it and absolutely loved it, and it is Swear on This Life by Renee Carlino. And this is a book that I wish had so much more hype, and I've not really heard many people talk about it, but it is so good. It is childhood best friends to lovers. They're also neighbors. They grow up in houses right next to each other, obviously become best friends as kids, and slowly as they get older it turns into more, but at one point there is an incident that separates them and they lose contact, and then many years later they reconnect, and the way in which it all unfolds is so cool and so beautiful. But it's also this whole thing of like, okay, but we've spent so much time apart and we've built our own separate lives, and now we've reconnected, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can just fall back into the way things were. Like, we both have new relationships and we both have these careers that we're building, and all of these sort of factors that they have to consider, and obviously you get to see them figure out what they're gonna do. But I absolutely loved it. Yes, it is very similar to Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren in the sense of childhood best friends to lovers, separated, reconnected many years later. I actually liked it more than Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I don't know if everyone will agree with me, but that is my personal opinion. So in saying that, if you loved Love and Other Words and you want something kind of similar and you want to relive the Love and Other Words experience, like reading that book for the first time, I definitely recommend Swear on This Life. I just really love childhood best friends to lovers. There's just something so pure and beautiful in those stories, and a lot of them are so unrealistic, but they're just so fun to read about. Definitely recommend Swear on This Life. And coming in at my number 1 spot for my favorite book of all time, currently, at least how I feel right now, Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. Again, I read this about a year ago and it has just stuck with me and like remained in my brain for so long, and I don't really know why, but I can't not give this my top spot. I honestly just need to reread it. I have ordered 2 of Mia Sheridan's other books and I'm really interested to see how they compare, but Archer's Voice just holds a place in my heart that I do not think will be able to be replaced. Like, I'm sure I'll have other favorite books, but there's just a certain part of me that I think will always love Archer's Voice in a different kind of way. In this book we have Bree and Archer. Bree ends up moving to a small beach town where Archer has grown up and lived all of his life. They end up bumping into each other, but he kind of seems to ignore her almost, and she's kind of offended. So when she talks to some people in the town, she's like, oh, this guy didn't even speak to me. They go, oh, it must be Archer, like he doesn't speak at all. No one has heard him speak since he was a child. It kind of seems like the town has made him an outcast, like they've kind of pushed him out of their social circle, I guess. So I guess this would also be considered a small town romance, which I love. But instead of everyone else's thoughts and judgments about Archer deter her, she is just really intrigued and wants to get to know him more. So they become friends and a relationship unfolds. Bree and Archer are both very broken people and they've both dealt with a lot of trauma in their lives, and so their relationship is not necessarily very easy because they're dealing with that added level of baggage and trauma and all the stuff that comes along with that. But again, like I've mentioned previously, I love books where 2 broken people find peace and love with each other. And one thing that I absolutely love about Archer's Voice is that there is a part where they basically realize that they have baggage and they separate in order to heal themselves as individuals and as separate people. So they go off and do their own thing and kind of figure out their baggage, I guess, and then they come back together, and it is so beautiful to watch. And I love that they didn't like ignore this baggage and just kind of be like, oh, but we're falling in love and so our baggage doesn't matter anymore and our trauma doesn't matter anymore and like love solves all, because that's not always the case. I feel like that's a very unrealistic way to look at things, but it's a way that a lot of romance books kind of go about things. So I think there's just so many aspects to this story that I absolutely love. Archer was just such a beautiful, innocent, pure boy, and I loved him. Definitely one of my favorite book boys that I've ever read about. Him and Atlas, just #1 spot, honestly. And I feel like you often get these like good girl, bad boy tropes in books, and this is not necessarily the opposite, because I wouldn't say that the girl is like bad girl, but she's just more outgoing and just like super bubbly and like bright and loves to talk to people, and he is just like shy and reserved and very innocent and very like, you know what I mean? And the combination of those 2 personalities just worked so well, and it's something that I just feel like we don't see a lot in books, and I loved reading about it. So if you haven't already read this, I definitely recommend it. I will say I get a lot of questions about where I got this. I've never seen it in Australian bookstores. I got mine online. I pretty much buy all of my books online, either from Amazon, Booktopia, or Book Depository. Those are pretty much the only 3 places that I buy books online, and I can't remember which one I got this from, but one of those 3 places. But those are all of the books that I have to talk about today. It was so fun to just sit and really just pour out all my thoughts on all of my favorite books. I hope you guys might have found another book to add to your TBR, and I hope that you love these books as much as I did. If you have any other books that you think I would love, any recommendations, leave them down below. I would love to hear it. Or if you have any thoughts on the books that I love and have talked about in this video, also leave a comment down below. I totally know that not all of you will love all of these books, and that's so fine, and if you have a different opinion, that's so fine. I would love to hear it as well. But I love you guys so much, and I can't wait to see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.